Welcome everyone to Knightsarena Spike Down Episode 6. Split 1 is done, and we're going to dive into the ups and the downs and who surprised us. And of course, Face-Off is upon us. So that means we'll be jumping into the teams, predictions, and our thoughts heading into week 1 of that. Of course, my name is LaFortune. Joining me as always is George Geddes. And George, last week, the biggest week of the Split 1, we thought maybe that would have been week 4, but it ended up being last week. Some heartbreakers for a few teams, some relief for others. How did you kind of see last week?
Yeah, I mean, I was watching it and I thought that like the first 2 days was particularly like quite important because I saw obviously Moist getting the victory over FaZe. I saw Mad being, OR esports. We can finally decide which actually is the worst team from the first split now. So obviously that's a bit of a consolidation going towards the end. And obviously you had the guard M80. Like this was probably the match of the... I mean, this is the match that everyone kind of wanted to watch, This is the match that everyone thought, okay, these two are like the best, maybe outside of G2 esports as well. Who could actually take it. I was extremely impressed watching the guard. I thought they played exceptionally well. M80 looked relatively lackluster. And I think it just goes to show that the guard are still, that kind of top team. And, obviously they did have one loss, but it's not the loss that like set them on a path of, spiraling out of control. Unlike, Shopify. I think we'll get to that a little bit later, but I think, TSM as well, getting a big victory again, still continuously performing well. But yeah, the guard, I was probably the most impressed by them.
Totally.
I thought it would have been like 2-1, maybe. It would have been like we kind of predicted it would have probably been close, but
we
it was a 2-0.
Hoping for a 3-mapper, really. I mean, you kind of want a series like that to go 3 maps, but I think that's a testament to the level of the guard. And I think, last week we were going, M80's got to be the best team in the league. They have to be. I think Face-Off is really going to hammer home that point. Double elimination. I don't know. I think the Guard and M80 are so close to each other. It was a still close series, although it was a 2-0. But I think Guard just had that clutch factor and kind of that world-class edge to them almost. It felt like that. And as you mentioned, TSM taking one over Disguise. Nice to see Disguise put up a fight with Riku coming in. That was promising. And then kind of all the other games shook out mostly like we thought. I think the exception would be FaZe Moist. I think you went Moist, I went FaZe, I think. Is that kind of how that rumbled out?
I think so, yeah. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
So, disappointed on my end, but FaZe Clan are still happy. And that's mainly due to the way the Friday worked out with Auction beating Turtle Troop and G2 beating Shopify. That meant FaZe got in and Shopify didn't. But what a roller coaster of a week. Then obviously we end Split 1 with Turtle Troop, Shopify, and Group A not making it to Face-Off, Mad Lions, OR not making it. Those were kind of set, I think, for probably like week 3. But Group A came down to the last day, last match. And what an interesting split. I mean, we put Shopify, both of us, as our third best team at the start of Split 1.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think honestly, it's incredibly disheartening. Yeah, it's really disheartening because, this was the team that everyone kind of thought had one of the most stable cores going into the actual tournament, right? Because, you think about the likes of, G2 esports, like TSM, these kinds of teams have been making several roster changes. Obviously, Disguised, a new team, Oxygen, a new team, Moist also was a new team as well. So it's like, most of these teams are kind of putting together multiple different players rather than kind of just continuing on from like older cores. And I think Shopify is probably one of the the oldest, right? I'm pretty sure if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Like the oldest core out of any of these teams. And honestly, it kind of just goes to show that I think now we're at a point where Shopify do probably need to like make some changes to the team. But I think that overall, teams that like let us down, Shopify is definitely probably the most prominent one. I think that they definitely didn't fulfill the expectations that we kind of thought they would. But I think this is kind of par for the course of any core when it comes to kind of any team ever. It's that eventually you will kind of you will reach a point where changes just need to be made.
Happens.
And yeah, it does happen. Teams just hit a brick wall eventually. Regardless of what you could potentially try and do, some teams just, they come to an end, and this is kind of what happens. And I think that it was incredibly disappointing because Shopify was so close to winning, like almost all of their games, right? Like,
if I'm looking at them, they 2-0 Turtle Troop week 1. We're like, okay, hey, perfect. 2-1 loss against Auction, 2-1 loss against FaZe, 2-1 loss against Moist, then blown up by G2. I mean, it's at some point you have to go, all right, man, they just can't get over that final little step. And yeah, I would agree. I would say they are definitely the biggest disappointment of Split 1. And I would say a close second, oddly enough, still in their group would be FaZe. I really expected more out of them. I didn't rate them highly, but I was like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, they should qualify without needing someone else to lose. Like that kind of thought process. Like, they should make it to the face-off, and they should be okay. But their losses, I mean, the G2 one, excusable. They beat Church or beat Shopify. You're feeling good going to week 4. Then they lose to Auction and lose to Moist. Like, oh my goodness. Like, those are teams that FaZe should not lose to. And when I was able to talk to a few of them, they kind of hinted at, we lost to ourselves, which, fair point. But at the same time, it's like, man, those losses are like, you're doing well against G2 and Shopify. You're beating who you should beat, then you lose to 2 teams you should win. So I think they're a close second disappointment for me, mainly because they're not playing up to their level at the moment. Is kind of where I'm at with them. And then I guess if we had to talk surprises, I'm going to take the obvious ones. I'm going to go Moist from Group A and Disguise from Group B. Moist Moguls, we always knew they kind of had what it takes, and they really put it together at the end of Split 1 to make a run. Getting signed, obviously, was a big motivator for them, and they've been putting in the work. You can kind of tell from week 1 to now the difference in them. And then Disguised, I mean, changing out a player and still putting up a fight against TSM, that at least bodes well for them moving forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think TSM especially, I was shocked by how well they've been playing. Definitely going in the right direction. I think that TSM definitely one of the teams that surprised me for sure. Because I always harp on TSM, and I think they've actually proved me wrong entirely this split. I'm incredibly impressed with them. But yeah, Moist, obviously, formerly a breakthrough. We kind of mentioned at the start that, these guys should be, kind of up there with the top teams. And I think now, as you mentioned, once we're kind of coming into like the latter half of the first split, we're kind of getting to realize that, this team is actually up there. They can actually
They're the real deal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the most important thing. And then I agree. Yeah, FaZe is disappointing. I think especially when you look at like their previous runs, you always kind of had them as that kind of team that maybe could make it. Especially you think about that LCQ run they had was really unreal. Impressive. And then you kind of look at this team and it's like, is this really the same team? Like it kept similar players, but it's like it's not. You know what I mean? Like it. And I think the addition of Rossi as well. It doesn't feel like the same team. And you would have thought that the addition of Rossi could potentially help them even more. Rather than be kind of a detriment, which I don't think he is, but I think it's just a situation where this team might not be gelling. It might not be working as effectively as what the coach maybe wants them to. It might just be something where they just need more time, and maybe they can like show what they can do. But I personally don't hold my breath on FaZe. I think some of the other teams look a bit more promising, like Oxygen. I think I'm impressed by. I will say wholeheartedly that I think some of those guys are incredibly talented. So,
you gonna talk about Scuba again? Everybody plug in.
I feel like I have to bring up Scuba in like every single episode of this point, but come on, man, the kid's nuts, Hey,
so, I can't blame you. And the crazy thing is, though, you look at like you mentioned Auction, I mentioned Moist, and you say, well, FaZe, they might need time, but in the same amount of time, Auction and Moist Moguls have turned things around, while FaZe haven't. So it's like, man, they don't have time really. So I think Face-Off is going to be the real test of like, can we see more from FaZe? And that's kind of what I'm hoping. And we could dive a bit more into players topping the charts. I mean, this is you tell George this 3 weeks ago, he probably wouldn't believe it's Ken Peck. Granted, less rounds played than everyone, and then bringing up the rear is Whippy in 20. And quite a few people in the middle that we have talked about. Now, I will say, a lot of controller players are up here. Not a lot of duelists. The highest rated duelist, if I had to look real hard, is Qualanoob. No surprise there. I mean, that dude has been out of
he's been popping off, yeah.
And a lot of flex and controllers mixed in there. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was literally just about to mention as well. There's plenty of flex players. I think, honestly, now that we've kind of shifted out of this chamber meta and we've kind of got into a point where there's, Jets coming back into the fold, initiators are a little bit more powerful now. Some of the other agents got buffed as well. You kind of look at it like, damn, we've actually got a pretty wide selection of agents. I feel like nobody's been left out here. And I think I look at the list as well, and you see quite a few in-game leaders as well. Obviously,
quite a few.
Xander, Valen. I think those two, especially even Poised, is up there as well. So you've got to kind of look at it and think, wow, these guys are actually still putting up these numbers, because we always kind of had these fragging IGLs as a good point of contention for some of these teams.
Yep.
I think I've mentioned it several times. And I think Xander, Valen, incredibly high fragging potential. Absolutely. And they are also good strategically, which I do think definitely works their favor. And I think that, there's also room for non-fragging IGLs. We've seen, even Steel, not exactly the biggest fragger, but still a good in-game leader. It's still possible. Absolutely. For sure. People always mentioned Boaster back in the day prior to lock-in wasn't a fragging IGL. Now he's, now he's fragging and the team's doing incredibly well. But side note, obviously, I think Kampeki, for sure, we mentioned last week as well. I was definitely proven wrong by this guy. Very lackluster performance under Sentinels. Yeah, it's Wampeki out in full force. This guy is he is absolutely destroying everyone. Yeah. And fair play to the kid. When you join a team like Sentinels, you have such a high burden of responsibility, right? And then you get caught after a poor performance, and then you get another shot. And you don't miss, you know what I mean? And that's something I'm very impressed by. So,
and he's playing Sky KO Breach. Those roles typically, so there's a couple roles that are easy plug and play. Disguised, easy plug and play role, right? Sentinel. He's going to be away from the team most of the time. He doesn't have to worry about trading and spacing in most situations, kind of doing his own thing. Duelist, flex, really hard to fit in. And controller, somewhat, right? Timing on the smokes, figuring that out. You have to worry about trading a little bit. But throwing somebody in who's new to a system, who instantly fits, plays the flex role, one of the most important roles in the game, and is able to trade the highest cast out of anyone right now in Challenger. So that means he's getting a kill, he's getting an assist, or he's being traded or living every round in 86%. So 86 times in a round, he's basically getting a kill or being traded for his life, which is insane. That's really high. That is crazy. And I mean, you have to think that's a hard role to just jump in and do. And I mean, he's leading it. And obviously we can't talk about the top 20 rated players without talking about Koala and EU, who are quickly behind him. Koala has been, I mean, pretty much playing Jet, and he has been showing why he is still probably one of the best Jets in North America.
Yeah. As I mentioned on Twitter, I have no idea why this kid has noob in his name. Why is it even there?
Doesn't make sense.
This guy is the complete antithesis of what a noob is. I don't know what's going on here. Maybe that's just part of what he's trying to go for. I don't know. But Koala Noob, exceptional player for sure. I'm sure M80 are extremely happy that he's still continuing his good form. I think he's been playing exceptionally well. I've always been a fan of Gianni. I think he's a great player. So, not surprised to see him up there. I think EU as well, another player that we kind of noted, very good individually. Would he be able to kind of continue his form?
Top initiator in North America, really.
Yeah, and now look at him. I highly rate the kid. I think he's incredible. Again, I think a lot of these players you can kind of tout as pretty good. You could probably replace some of the top partner teams.
Oh, absolutely.
You could probably pick up most of these guys and put them in, and they'll probably be better. And I will say, shout out to Narrate as well. I think this kid is, he's coming into a team like Mad Lions that have not performed well. They're not doing great, and obviously they finished, 1-4, something along those lines. Yeah. And this kid only had a few matches to play, and obviously he doesn't get his time to shine. Obviously, coming in for Will, it's one of those things where you kind of have to put up solid performances to actually, keep that name and let it stick. And credit to him. I think that's been very impressive. He's obviously got a lot of talent. I think that, people harping on him, I think are being way too hypercritical.
Yeah,
I think he's
I
he's a solid player. So yeah, huge props to him. And yeah, I think other than that, like the list kind of
it makes
think
sense.
it makes sense. You got like Trent, Nismo, they're always kind of going to be up there,
Oxy's in there.
like
I mean,
even
Verno.
Oxy,
I think Verno in there is kind of nice.
Verno,
Crack Kid, I believe he's 16, 17 in there.
16, yeah.
Yeah,
really
showing
impressive.
a lot of promise. Yeah, and he's playing that initiator flex type of role. And every time he walks Oxygen, it's kind of like, Scuba and Verno, who, by the way, are very close to each other in the list. I believe they're 18 and 16 respectively. When you watch Oxygen play, you're like, hey, those two are going to have a good game. Pretty much every time you watch Oxygen. And they're kind of need to pop off factors, Pony and mainly Pony. If Pony has a good game, and if Randy Savage plays to the level we know he can play, you can expect Oxygen to do well. But to see those two up there makes so much sense. And everyone else can kind of guess the rest of the names out here. It's very who you'd expect. But a lot of controller players. Val and Xander up here. Moose, B-Dog. I mean, controller, and they have an interesting thing going on over on Shopify.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing, but it's
it's
not working. So
speaking of Shopify, let's jump into tweet time. The first question comes from Tupazi. Do you think Shopify Rebellion need a roster switch? And he actually gets his own opinion here. Potentially an IGL and Vanity to get them back on track to qualify for the Ascension tournament. Let me just preference this question by saying they have to do well in Split 2 to then make playoffs, then to make Ascension. So it's an even longer road than that. And is it an IGL change? Is it something more substantial? Honestly, it seems like they really do need a reset. They have a couple choices here. I think you go the IGL route, and then you have to change a lot of philosophy, a lot of comps, and kind of start fresh naturally. Or you do the route of slotting in a couple new support players around your team and seeing if that takes off. Now, who you remove, I mean, look, Nick hasn't been here that long. I don't know if we've really seen his potential. From what I know and from what I talk to people, the dude is unbelievably good. Also young, 17, 18. He's kind of your future. Moose is your consistent guy. So then that leaves B-Dog,
it's
Mana,
just Dazzle.
and Dazzle.
I think it's just Dazzle that you can really kind of...
Do you get rid of Mana, B-Dog? That'd be crazy, right?
No, you don't get rid of B-Dog. Honestly, I think really the only two that you would actually, kind of have an idea as to get, who you would get rid of if you was to make a replacement. It would kind of have to be Mudder or Dazzle. And I don't think Mudder is, I don't think he's actually, I think he's a decent player. Especially if he's kind of playing more of a supportive role. I could totally see why Mudder would stay. I think Mudder is definitely very good at playing multiple agents as well.
Very big agent pool.
So yeah, I'm totally fine with Mudder staying. I think if he was to make a replacement, unfortunately, I would say it would have to be the Loaf himself, Dazzle. He is the in-game leader of this team, and unfortunately, you do have to bear a level of responsibility when you take up that role. He's been on this team. He's been a part of the core for so long, and he's done so well. And maybe this is just time to change the actual direction of the team.
Totally.
So I think if you was to get, but then again, there's really which other IGLs are there out there that you can potentially replace. I mean, Vanity is one of the options, but
was it Nerve?
Would Vanity go
at one point?
Well, it's just one of these things where I feel like Shopify would need a name like Vanity to be able to actually kind of push them back,
and kind of garner that respect, I guess, right?
Exactly. You kind of have to if you're Shopify for sure. This isn't an organization that will just kind of, they picked this team up for a reason, right? And they didn't even make the partnership, right? So it's like they're going all in on this, right? So I think if you was to make a roster change, I think Vanity would be smart. If you could get him, I don't know if you could. I feel like Vanity doesn't really have a lot of options, I guess, because of the fact that, the partnered league literally begins in 10 days. So, maybe.
Yeah. I could see that being a possibility. And I think he brings experience. He brings probably fresh ideas. And honestly, that might be the biggest thing they need is just fresh ideas. A new perspective can shine a lot of light. I mean, TSM's an example. DSG is an example. Turtle Troop is the best example. You bring in a couple pieces or just one piece, and that new perspective changes the way people view the game and could always lead to net positive. So we'll see. I think they have to do something, whether it's soul searching or bringing somebody new in. So we're going to have to see what they do. And the second question comes in from I Love G2 Shazam. It's hard to read because I do love Shazam too. So I feel very called out at this. I'm not biased. I'm just saying he's one of the greatest. And he asks, who do you have as a team that can make a deep run in face-off that no one would see coming? I added the face-off part and was assuming that's what he meant. And honestly, I wouldn't consider any of these teams a sleeper. But
I'd say Oxygen. That's my prediction.
Stealing my answer. That's okay.
Oh, sorry. You could go. You can go. I'll just pretend I didn't say that.
No, it's okay. You picked Oxygen. I was going to pick them, but now I get two choices. See how this works? And I'm going to go with Moist.
This is ridiculous. Now you just have like two cop-outs.
Hey, listen, you set up the T. Okay. I just hit
It's fine.
But I think the two obvious answers, and I mean, I guess there's three. You could say this is FaZe's redemption chance. No one would really see it coming. Maybe. But the obvious choices are Oxygen or Moist. Disguised, I think, have that level of potential. We've kind of started to see it. Now, if we close our eyes and think who has a better chance of beating M80 and Guard, probably both once in this event, you really don't pick Disguise. So, and you really don't pick Oxygen or Moist. So really, those are the three really, choices.
To be honest. These guys look ridiculous.
Right.
Maybe G2?
Maybe G2 and maybe M80 on a better day. But yeah, I'm going to go Moist. They've been putting it together. And I also think their side of the bracket is perfect for them. Playing TSM first, then probably playing M80. It's better than the alternative of playing G2 than playing the Guard, right? On the other flip side. So
I'd probably agree. I'd agree, yeah.
It makes sense for them. But if Oxygen beat G2, then who knows? They could be hot and go on a run. So I think both those answers are pretty valid. And speaking of face-off, let's talk predictions. Let's see what we're going to see. Obviously, it starts today. March 22nd, and the first match is M80 Disguise, and it would be followed by TSM Moist Moguls. Disguise meet up against M80 again, and do you think, George, are we going to see the same story as last time?
No, M80 win. M80 win. It's fine. Yes, M80 will win, yes. If M80 lose, I would say I'd quit my job, but it's kind of bad timing on that one. So maybe I'll just go M80 on the. It's fine. Okay. It's all right. I'd say M80. Yeah, M80 for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. But I think Disguise are on a good bracket where they lose to M80. I think they play a better opponent and they could make a loser's run. I don't know how deep that loser run is going to get. As much as I want to pick Disguised, I do want to say the addition of Riku has definitely made them seemingly more coherent and a bit more put together and not less explosive, but less sloppy. I think with Exalt, they had a lot of pop and he could win them or lose them around. And I think with Riku, he's a plug and play. They've had to change some rules around. So I think they're starting to figure that out. But obviously the smart choice is M80. And then TSM Moist Moguls, can this one go either way, I guess, is kind of the overarching question.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think TSM have the edge, but I could see either team winning this. I don't even know who I would predict, I guess. I would still lean on TSM, but I'm not sure. I feel like any team could win this one. Yeah, I have no idea. So.
Okay. Well, I'll pick then. I'm going Moist Moguls.
Okay.
Moist Moguls.
All right. Respect.
I got to pick one streamer team. Follow my Twitter.
Fair enough.
Just kidding. But yeah, Moist Moguls, I think they've looked consistent. I think they're looking good. And I think if Kempeki can carry that team over the line, it makes sense. I think Corey's been playing good, but I think Moist Moguls are looking just deadly, and I think they're slept on. Now, the couple of the matches that should be easier to predict, the Guard FaZe Clan and G2 Oxygen. What do we see with the Guard FaZe Clan? I'm going to read your mind. You pick Guard. That's my guess.
Yeah, I'm going to be boring, unfortunately. These guys play on my birthday, so I feel like, I have the luck. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to go the Guard, and then I'm going to go G2 as well. I know,
Safe.
boring,
Very
but
safe.
I
Boring,
just,
but
I
safe.
feel, as much as it is boring, I feel like, these guys are pretty cut and dry, I think. I just think they're kind of a check above the other team. So, yeah, I'm going to go those two for sure.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm going to agree. I mean, the guard, G2 no-brainers. And in just thinking about it, like, how crazy would it be that we could get a guard G2 matchup in upper semis and an M80, possibly Moist Moguls matchup. And then after that, we could get a rematch. I mean, face-off is going to be crazy. Thank goodness it's double elimination.
Oh yeah,
and I just
this
can't
bracket's
wait. You guys
really good.
You do get to see us also at the halfway point. We're gonna come up with another episode, so we'll get to be able to predict the rest of the bracket. We're just gonna do the first matches because if we start trying to guess who's gonna play who, I'd lose my mind. But that's it. that's everything. Thanks so much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. Let us know on our socials. Who do you have making a deep run in face-off? We're curious. We want to know. And also, don't forget to follow Knightsarena for all the updates regarding challengers. And stay tuned because face-off starts right now.